Okay, everyone, we're gonna get started.
Okay, you wanna hold this? This is on, so it's getting picked up by the Zoom. Just be mindful of that.
Be conscious of sound in the room, make sure they can hear. We do have a mic for Alon as well as the panelists, so we'll use that. But thank you everyone for coming. This is our first education workshop in the VMS program. So I'm really excited to bring this to life. I'd like to first acknowledge that we are gathered on the ancestral, unceded, and currently occupied territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. So thank you for joining me here and everyone else. This was a big undertaking for us this year to get the education committee up and running. So I'd like to acknowledge the committee first, who is here in the room, Ray, Ian, Sandy, and then Corey, who's our lead. Thank you guys for joining us and making this a real thing. And we're excited to have some more educational workshops throughout the year for both mentees and mentors. Alon is our expert today and facilitator, taking us through customer discovery. So thank you for joining us. And then we have Ty and Melissa here, mentors in the program, as well as supporting on the panel today. And I think we're putting Ty in the hot seat a little bit. So that's really great. And thanks everyone else who came in today. Those of you online, thanks for joining. Alon is going to go through kind of lean canvas overview. We'll go through a mock canvas, Ty and Melissa up here on the board. There will be time for some Q&A, and then we'll do some panelist conversation as well. So if you have questions throughout, write them down. There will be an opportunity to ask that. And really, this is just about having some good open dialogue. So please feel free to raise your hand if something's unclear or you feel like you need a little bit more explanation on something. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay, the stage is yours.
Oop, wait, I'm gonna just hit record on this as well. Nope. There we go. Okay. So thank you for the introduction, Kayla. And I do want to correct you on this. It's not a mock lean canvas. It's a real lean canvas. The only thing is it's a mock mentoring session with Ty. But the canvas is real. Okay, I'm gonna put a timer. Because I said I'm going to do it in 10 minutes or less. So there we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a crash course in the Lean Canvas, customer discovery and introducing the Lean Canvas. I'm not going to walk you through the Lean Canvas in isolation. Rather, I'm just going to present the context for the Lean Canvas, how we're going to use it, how it came about, and then we're going to bring Ty and then introduce the Lean Canvas in real time with Ty actually helping us fill in the blanks. So let's see what we're doing. So the whole idea of the lean startup methodology is attributed to Steve Blank. He used to work in Silicon Valley many years before the dot-com bubble burst. And then in 2005, he wrote a book that is considered to be the inception of the lean startup movement called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. He basically said, the whole idea of venture creation is broken, is wrong, because it's based on a traditional model of product development from existing large corporations. So the traditional development process for products is create a concept, create a business plan, pitch it, get funded, then develop the product, then alpha, beta, test it, and then launch it. And then the way you do it is you basically, somebody high up says, this is the ship date, and everything else goes backwards from that date, which was created mostly arbitrarily with no input or whatever. And so he said, this is all wrong because you're developing a product and you don't even know who wants it and who needs it. And what really startups need is to also consider the fact that you have to develop not just the product, but the customer. And sometimes in parallel and sometimes even before creating a product. So the whole idea is treating the customer development process as a parallel to the product development process. And so the 4 main steps of the customer development process are customer discovery, which we will talk about today, and that's the Lean Canvas as a tool, customer validation, customer creation, company building. So that's the framework that Steve Blank put down in writing, and then we're going to focus just on that first circle, customer discovery, and using the Lean Canvas as a tool. So what is the customer discovery process? This is a different book, which has a 12-point process in 2 phases. Steps 1 through 6 is the problem solution validation. And so what we really want to know is there a problem for us to solve, and what solution makes sense? And so you start by writing down assumptions about your problem, about your customer, about what you think you know about them, what you don't know about them, and then you go out and you interview people. So you do the problem interviews. And the point is to make sure that you can find people that have the problem you think exists and find that from them. Then, if you did not validate the problem the way you thought about it, you have to go back to square one and adjust your assumptions, your problems assumption, your customer assumption, everything else. And that's what the lean canvas will be used for. If you were able to validate, yes, people have the problem. Yes, I can find them. Yes, they say it in a way that is what I thought about the problem. You go to validate the solution. At that point, you're essentially doing the same thing. You're saying, hey, I heard these people have this problem. Do you have the problem? They say, yes, great. Said, well, I've been thinking about a solution. What do you think about this solution? They hate it. They love it. They give you pointers. They have objections. They have reservations. And if you can't validate that the solution, the way you present it to people, is not adopted or they're not happy about it, you go back to square one and you reimagine what solution would actually make sense. If you validated it, you go to phase two. So phase one, again, validating the problem through problem interviews, validating the solution through solution interviews. Phase two is only the first step that we actually build anything. Until now, we're not building anything. We're not spending money other than buying coffee for people. Phase two, rough draft your idea. We call it an MVP, minimum viable product. You've probably heard it many, many times. I personally don't like the term. There's a different one that I prefer, which is minimum lovable product. It has a nuance to it beyond the scope of today, but MVP is the most commonly referred to acronym. MVP, as Steve Blank put it, is not a cheap product. It's a smart learning tool. So we want to build the type of product that is the simplest and cheapest and fastest to allow us to validate that there is a market, somebody's willing to actually pay for what the solution we thought would be. So the difference is solution validation is conceptual. Here's what I think the solution would give you for your problem. The MVP is, here's where you put your credit card number. Let's see if people are actually giving me their credit card information to put in an order for this. So again, business validation. So minimum viable product, we're 5 minutes in, doing MVP interviews. So again, we're trying to catch people willing to commit to buying and using that product. And then if we did not validate it, we go back and fix it. If we validate it, we will never have a single MVP. We always have to have iteration of the MVP because each MVP validates a tiny part, a slice of the lean canvas or the idea. So we want to be strategic and run it as multiple iterative experiments until we feel that we validated sufficiently the idea of the business, and then we can move on to the customer validation, which is the second stage of the customer development after the customer discovery. So customer discovery ends with a validated MVP after validating the solution and the problem before through interviews. Okay, now, 3 core principles for the lean startup. So again, Steve Blank created this customer discovery process, and then he had approached by somebody, and then he started teaching, I think at Stanford, and then he had Eric Ries come up to him and say, I have this great idea, give me $1 million. He said, great, I'll give you money if you sit through my class. And so Eric Ries sat through his class, and that was the outcome, was the lean startup book that Eric Ries wrote. And so the 3 core principles is where Eric Ries brought this idea of customer discovery with agile. And so the 3 concepts are validated learning, number 2, innovation accounting, product market fit, and then the third one, build, measure, learn, agile development. So realistically, customer validated learning is what Steve Blank started with, as well as this idea of product market fit. And then Eric Ries brought in this idea of agile development through build, measure, learn to make it faster. How do we do that? Validation learning. So again, the lean canvas is really the tool for helping you to do validated learning systematically and hold yourself accountable. So what is validated learning? So you notice that I'm showing you a 4-step customer discovery, validation, but we're only focusing on the first one, which is customer discovery. And then the 3 core principles, but we're only focusing on the first one, which is validated learning. So you're really getting the tip of the iceberg of what the process would look like. So again, this is just the entry point. Validate learning in 3 steps. I've got 3 minutes left. Write down your assumption, which is what we use the lean canvas for. Number 2, find the right people. Number 3, ask the right questions. So again, how do you write down your assumption? Alexander Osterwalder in 2010, so 5 years after the 4 steps of the epiphany, wrote down or put this idea of a business model canvas. Instead of spending a 300-page document called a business plan, can we do it on a 1-pager? And the business model canvas is what he came up with. There are some issues and limitation with a startup that this does not fit well, and so the version I prefer is Ash Maurya. In 2012, he created the running lean version, the lean canvas, which is similar framework but slightly different language, and that's what we're going to use with Ty today. So how do you keep track of your assumptions? You write them down on the lean canvas. So a single canvas, sit down, 10 to 15 minutes, you should be able to complete everything if you have your idea flushed out sufficiently. Number 2, find the right people. I really like Justin Wilcox. He coined this idea called the SPA approach, which is once you find or you make an assumption who has the problem, you can break it down into different customer segments. Then you have to say, well, who should I prioritize? Are these, is it the K-12 teachers, the university profs, the students, the healthcare workers, the nurses, the government people, whatever. So if you put down your segments on a list, you basically rank them by size, pay capability, and access, which means how fast you can get them to buy into this. And then you just do a multiplication. In engineering, we call it weighted, multi-criteria weighted decision matrix. And you basically numerically identify which has the biggest number on this list. And then you say this number has the highest potential because the group size, the ability to pay money for what I'm selling them, and the access to this group have the combination of the biggest impact for me to make it work. So that's how you find the right people. But again, within each segment group, you have to be mindful of another theory called the diffusion of innovation theory, which is dated back to 62. And the idea is that any new technology or new innovation has a diffusion of its own. And it starts like a Gaussian corvical normal distribution. You start with innovators, the very leading edge. Some people call them beachheads. It's really just 2% of the people, of all the people you think have the problem. And that's where all startups have to start. That's the first people that will jump ship and be willing to skip what they've done before and try something new and risky are the innovators. And it's just 2%. So that's where you want to focus your attention initially. For those of you who heard the Valley of the Death or Chasm of Death, that's the transition from early adopters into the majority of the population, which is beyond the scope of this talk, but happy to talk about it another time. But the idea is that you always start with innovators and move your way into the curve naturally, which really means that to find your early adopters and the innovators, you're looking for people who have the problem and are actively looking for a solution that is better than the one they already have. So if you find somebody and they don't have the problem or they don't know it's a problem, these are not the right people you should talk to. The third part, asking the right question. I really love Rob Fitzpatrick, the mom test. He gives it a really nice way of saying, how do you ask the right questions when you find the right people? 3 big ideas. Number 1, don't ask close-ended question, only ask open-ended question. When you ask close-ended, it's like a survey, you get limited information. If you ask open-ended, you get the rich picture, and it works a lot better and faster. Never ask for opinion of hypothetical future. Always ask, what did you do last time this happened to you? So ask them about the past time they had the problem and ask them what they actually did, because that will teach you the most information. And the last piece is never offer them a solution in a customer interview or a problem interview. Always ask for referral. So again, ask them about open-ended question about last time they had the problem, ask them what they did, and when they tell you everything you needed, ask them, that's great, who else should I talk to about this particular problem? So that's the 3 steps of the mom test. So to sum it up, and I'm slightly over time, takeaway, customer discovery is structured learning. It's about validating that the world is ready for you to solve this particular problem right now. If you get non-validated answers, It does not mean the problem does not exist. It doesn't mean that your solution, the problem should not be solved, or it shouldn't be solved anytime in the future. It just means that the combination of why are you solving it, why are you solving this problem, and why are you solving it right now in this moment of history has to fall in the right place. And that's what you're looking for in validated learning. And that's leading us to the Lean Canvas. Before we go to Ty, what do you want to remember about the Lean Canvas? Oh, I forgot a T there, using the Lean Canvas, and I gave Casey an earful yesterday about that. Please don't forget that the point of the Lean Canvas is to be a tool that's helping you. It's not a goal in itself. So don't let that kind of confuse you. So the goal is to validate the idea, not to complete the Lean Canvas. Number two, a tool is only as useful as the skill you have to use it. If you don't know how to use it well, it's going to waste your time, not going to make you work better. So learn how to use it well, and this is what we're doing today. And then the last part is keep it simple, intuitive, up-to-date, and coherent. I guess Ty was talking about before, about keeping it up-to-date. So we'll see how well you're doing today. And coherence is really important. Each box has its own thing, but you have to be able that each box talks to another box and everything makes sense in the big picture. So this is a classic system thinking. You zoom in, and then you zoom out. You zoom in, and then you zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, and make sure that each box itself is consistent and coherent and intuitively clear. And then you zoom out and say, is the big picture intuitive, coherent, and clear? And if it's not, you keep on fixing until you're happy enough to move on. Okay, that was 14 minutes of 14 minutes of the history of the Lean Canvas customer discovery. And I'd like to invite now Ty to come to the hot seat. Or do you need your notes with you, or?
Bring notes.
Okay. Well, so Melissa has the other mic, and then we have two mics, yeah? So then everybody on Zoom can still hear me, and then the other mic also is connected to the Zoom. For now, I don't know if you want to ask people a thumbs up that they can hear both mics. Ty, do you want to say hello and tell people who you are in one sentence? What is the company that you're going to help us teach them the Lean Canvas through this lived example?
Sounds good. Oh, there's a red light.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if it's on.
Yeah.
My name is Ty Summach. I'm just going to hold this here in case it is on. So my company, a real company, is called SportShare. We are a community building platform for grassroots sports organizations. What was the other thing you wanted me to do? Is just
what the company is in high level, and then we'll fill in the blanks.
Yeah, and looking forward to doing this. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe just out of context too is I've been a big advocate for this type of framework. I've never looked at a business plan. I haven't done a business plan for SportShare. So big advocate of these tools, and it was refreshing to go back and do another Lean Canvas for my company. I haven't done one in about a year, and it was drastically different, which is a good thing.
So thank you very much, Ty. And Melissa will be our resident mentor. So the way it's going to work is, I guess I want to showcase a few things here. Number one is all the elements of the Lean Canvas and how they are applied and how you think about them. Number two, a lived example of how you process and make sense of what it is that you're thinking through. Don't clip it, because we're going to pass it between you and Melissa. And then the second thing is, with Melissa's help, as a good mentor, to be an observer and have a critical eye and constructive criticism and feedback to Ty on where things could be improved on, where gaps, where some assumptions and logical breakdown or potential logical breakdown. And the last piece, to show you that we can actually do this in a short time, because you can spend hours on this, and that's not the point. The point is to use the tool and get out of the building and have interviews. So the tool is just to keep a record of the assumptions, not to replace the interviews. So I'm gonna time for 1.5 minutes, so 90 seconds for each box. So we're gonna only spend 90 seconds for each box, for me to start with leading questions for each box. Let Ty respond. And Kayla, if you can help us by recording down what Ty gives us as a response so everybody can get the big picture at the same time. And then allow Melissa the time to mentor our mentee, Ty. The blue is probably the best one, yeah. Okay, everybody's ready? Yes? Okay, so 90 seconds, we begin. What is the problem you are solving? We're now transitioning to our panel, and we have some questions that were given in advance. Okay, so these are some questions that came up in advance, and thank you to the Education Committee for curating some questions. So these questions are going to be go both ways, both as you as entrepreneurs using the Lean Canvas, as well as mentors mentoring new entrepreneurs trying to do the same, right? So let's start with the easy one. What advice do you most often give to mentees when you talk about customers for the first time, about customer discovery? What's the first advice that you would likely give somebody when they're just struggling with customer discovery?
Get out there and just do it. Like, start somewhere. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just the act of getting out there and doing it will inherently teach you how to do it. But
Sorry,
if you-
what's it?
the act of identifying people that are potential customers and having a conversation. So often they get stuck in perfection. And I would say I would rather you get it wrong and do it than get stuck in the planning and trying to find the perfect, because the first group you target is not likely going to be the right one. The first set of questions you ask are likely not going to be perfect. But that, just having that experience will start to teach you what you need to know. So the most common advice I get there is like, don't overthink it. Just get out there and try it and see what you learn.
I think for me, like, this is just a natural tendency. So this is more of when they actually get out there and start doing it. I think it's very exciting as an aspiring entrepreneur to get that first conversation. It's very hard to not turn that first conversation into a demo of your idea, as opposed to an actual, forensic investigation into the problem. So my advice is just that, yes, get out there and do it, but make sure that you don't pitch. Rule number one of customer development is no pitching, and that you need to just start it off as discovery work. The other part of that, which is maybe a tactic, is the 80-20 rule, that you should be listening 80% of the time and speaking 20% of the time. If you feel like those ratios are off, you're doing it wrong. But oftentimes I see those early conversations in there, and yeah, it feels like a pitch, and you're not going to get good intelligence coming back from that.
Okay, so now I'm conflicted between two questions because two of them can lead so nicely after what you just said. So maybe I'll lead with the one that you said the last, which is this ability to listen. Okay, so how do you encourage mentees to actually stay open and actually learn when customer feedback challenges their original ideas or assumptions?
My response is usually that it's just data. Like, the goal is to go into a conversation without listening to analyze or evaluate, but can you just listen to understand? And that's what I see typically is the ability to have a really well-rounded conversation. What gets lost is you don't have to arrive at a conclusion at the end of the conversation. You can just listen to understand their perspective. Specifically, great products are built because of like a really, I think, intense and unique empathy for the customer. So the better you can curate the habit of listening with curiosity and listening to just understand, the better. And that's hard to do when you're passionate about something. But again, just that practice, and it can be writing down, the practice of writing down open-ended questions that you're going to test with potentially those folks. Making sure that they're not leading in any way. So using your AI partner of choice, like running through those and asking for samples that are not leading, that are open-ended, are all great ways to do it. But I would just say letting go of the need to analyze what comes out of the conversation as right or wrong or good or bad, and just listening to understand.
Yeah, I think there's a good just way to make sure that you enter into those conversations and making sure that you've got more of a, what's called a Lego mindset as opposed to a stone statue mindset. So, if you're too attached to the original shape of kind of what you created there, you'll ignore the best pieces the customers are handing to you. So, and another way of saying that is that you want to make sure that you're in love with the problem and that you're not in love with your solution. And if you go in there and you have a conversation and you get some feedback, sometimes a founder can walk away and feel like that was a personal attack, but then also act like, why was it a personal attack? Like, were you selling something? And someone said no. If you're just in there and you're having a deep dive on something around the problem, like no one can attack you on the problem. And I want to go into that conversation in terms of, like, say, for example, improving engagement and the health of community sport, because I really believe in sport. I want to have an open and honest conversation around, their problems, how they actually, navigate that. And to me, I gain so much more by listening to their problems and how they're trying to solve it and what ideas they have, because it helps inform kind of what we need to build next and what our product roadmap looks like. So anyways, Lego mindset versus being a stone statue and just not taking it personal. Everything is just, forensic investigation.
Okay, so so far I heard people overthink, try to make their idea super perfect, ask leading question, trying to sell, being defensive. There's a few other things that you mentioned, I think, that I probably didn't name. Um, of all the things that you've already mentioned, and maybe other things you haven't mentioned, if you had to put the top maybe one, two, or three things that you see young founders struggle the most getting customer discovery done well, what's the rank? Like, what's the single biggest struggle? And maybe if you have like a second place or third place for consolation, but
Jumping to solutions too quickly every single time. Yeah. The excitement to do something with Aviva.
I think the number one thing that I see is it's just very, very common for founders, aspiring entrepreneurs to not get out of their own kind of social circles when doing customer development. I think it's very important for you to understand, who is, like, your hypothesis around your customer segment. Who is that? Where are they? And go to them. And it might not be here in the Okanagan. They might be very, very hard to access. But a lot of times, you're asking your friends. You might be doing, a referral from a friend within your social networks on there. So getting out of there to remove as much bias as possible. The other thing I would say is that it's very convenient to just push surveys out there and do things digitally. In my mind, like, you need to, for one, you need to ask a question and that person needs to dive into a story, right? It needs to be so open-ended. And the only way you're going to do that is by having in-person conversations. It's tough to scale that. It's very uncomfortable sitting across the person, especially if they're, if they are kind of your future customer. But I think making sure that you get out of the building, get in front of who you think your customers are, and making sure that you are, is getting as far away from your social network as possible.
okay. Melissa, maybe I can kind of follow up on what you said because you're very you jumped on that like with excitement, and then saying you get overly excited with your answer. I found it a bit ironic. Um, can you clarify a bit when you say the problem is that they're jumping to solution, they're overly excited. Um, what is the struggle? What is that preventing them from doing that they should be doing?
So I think Ty had a really great answer, which is the number of people they're talking to is too small. And so when they hear a little bit of overlap between their idea and what they're hearing, then it's like, right to now I have the solution. So talk to more people than you think you need to. And if you can get to your customer segment that is outside your immediate bubble of people who will maybe in a having good intentions for you, tell you what you want to hear, want to support you, want to cheer you on, and may not give you the most accurate feedback. I think that's the piece. So it's that enthusiasm. We find people that we know who are cheering us on, and then we're down to building a product. And then when we actually start to get it out in front of paying customers, it starts to crumble and fall apart pretty quick.
Yeah, and I see this quite often, if you come back and that founder is like, I talked to 20 people and they all loved it, then chances are they're doing it wrong. So either you're asking leading questions or you're not talking to the right group. Like, you want to have those kind of uncomfortable conversations. So yeah, a lot of times they come back and it's just that everyone loved it and confirmed everything I thought. Therefore, I'm going to start building, and that's usually a very, very dangerous situation.
And that kind of answers the other question I had, which is, what do you see happens when people skip doing customer discovery well? I do want to maybe double down on the last comment that both of you said, which is, and this is how I explain, and I think it's very common for people to say, oh, entrepreneurship is like the scientific process. You have a hypothesis, you run an experiment, you look at the data, and then you make a conclusion. The thing that usually gets lost is the best scientists do the best science when the experiment is meant to prove themselves wrong, not prove themselves right.
Mhm.
And so if the only 20 people you talk to all said yes, you're not doing good science because you weren't presumably trying to prove yourself wrong. You were just happy with proving yourself right, and then kind of moving on in that way.
Yeah. The other thing, one more point on there, as I see, is just founders thinking that they're done customer development way too early. So they haven't hit that level of, theoretical saturation on there where, so I use the acronym ROI. Like, so, your investment that you're putting in there is your own time, especially if you're doing it in person and booking meetings, and like that takes a ton of time. And your return is information and knowledge. The only time you hit a saturation point when you think, you're done, not that customer development will ever be done, but at least this phase where I can move on to start to build, a prototype or an MVP or something like that. It's when you go into another conversation, you can sit across and be like, this customer over here is almost identical to the one that I talked to previously and the one before that, and I can almost predict now it's going to come out of their mouth because I'm just seeing the same patterns over and over. That's when you kind of hit the limit, saying, okay, this phase I can move forward on. But oftentimes they're still getting a mixed bag of information, and there's just that, I just love this solution. I really want to build this thing, and they just start coding. It happens constantly.
And the last piece I would add is I would even go as far to say that customer validation, if you can think about it like a skill that you're building, something that a skill that you will always lean on in your journey as an entrepreneur, it's not ever something that you'll stop doing. Especially when I work with visionary founders who always have a roadmap of where they want their company or business to go, and they're always sort of adjusting. Where I see entrepreneurs get into trouble is when that vision or that roadmap breaks away from direct and regular conversations with customers. So think of customer validation or customer discovery, really, as a skill that you want to develop and get good at and be doing all the time. So in sales, they say always be closing. I would say for a great founder or entrepreneur, always be curious and asking questions to get to know your customers. Like if you can just ingrain that curiosity, it begins to become a natural habit, and you'll just find that you end up building great products because you've taught yourself to be naturally curious about the people that you serve.
Yeah, love the customer.
So I'm mindful of the time. So maybe 2 minutes. Okay, so I've got one question and then a closing question. Well, actually, the closing question we'll see after anybody has any question from here. So as a mentor, and kind of trying to build on what you just said, Ty, on how do you know you've done customer discovery? Let's say it's not done never, but it's sufficiently well to move on. Like as a mentor, you're sitting with a mentee, they're telling you, I've been talking to X number of people, I've been hearing this. How do you know to help them know that it's good enough to move on?
I'll restate kind of what I said previously, but for me, I just look for that theoretical saturation around, obviously we're gonna spend a lot of time at the beginning around, what questions are you asking, who are you talking to, making sure that you are trying to pull out as much storytelling from the customer as opposed to them answering. So we'll spend a lot of time on that. But then, it really is getting into the point of, what are you learning back, and are we starting to see patterns? And ideally also there's some surprises in there, right? I'm surprised that this is happening, or I thought this person would buy it, but really it's this person over here. And we're starting to, see that pattern. So that's what we're looking for in there. I think maybe just, two more things I look for in there is ideal customers as well. I'm always looking for have you found the earliest adopters that are willing to use something that is not perfect, that is kind of a workaround solution? Are they potentially even, able to pay for it, and they've kind of validated what that payment would be? So I'm looking for those things in there. And I'm looking for patterns. Yeah, that's usually what I'm doing from a one-on-one perspective.
And then the other piece I would add, there's a degree more specificity. So I hear a degree of clarity and focus. So you heard me talk to Ty about like drilling it down to like bringing it in a funnel. And then the second piece often is they now know who's not their customer because they dabbled in some areas. Oh, and we're like, definitely not these, right? So you've had some positive interactions, you've had some surprises you've learned from, and then you stepped in the area that's like not here.
So having a clear boundary. Yeah, okay. Okay, so any, do you want to do online first?
There's some in the chat. We know customer discovery takes a lot of time and effort. What are some practical tips to balance having a day job or a 9 to 5 and doing the work of finding customers, validating the problem or solution, especially when you're in a work job all day?
I don't know. I don't really have too much, like, to be honest, I don't have too much like sympathy for this question. Because look, I mean, I technically I have 3 jobs. I got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, right? It again, I'm in love with the customer. I'm in love with their problem. I really believe in kind of the impact that, the company can make. I find time, whether that is even just being able to, book phone conversations, or do, email outreach, on lunch times, if I'm doing stuff on the weekends, if I'm waking up. A lot of my customers are on the East Coast, so a lot of times I'm up, on East Coast time, and I'm just fitting that in. So I think to me that's also like a bit of a barometer one thing I ask myself in terms of just being an entrepreneur is like, for this to, if this thing is really going to take off, and you better hope this thing is going to take off, it's going to take a decade. It's going to take a decade. So you have to ask yourself, like, is this really what I want to do for the next 10 years of my life? And that's a very serious question. And if you're not able to fit that in between, the certain hours you might have within a 9 to 5 or your weekends or your mornings, and just kind of figure it out, then I'd reevaluate if this is even worth doing customer development on. That's my filter truth.
And I'll quickly remind everybody the question, what of all the things you could do, why are you doing this particular thing? And of all the people who could do this particular thing, why does it have to be you? And if you don't know, can't answer why is this, why you, maybe you should do something else.
If you don't love it, you won't make it. Like, so you get past this and you get into scale, it's so hard. So you really do have to love it. What I would add is, as someone who's not a founder but works closely with them, what I've learned to observe is the founders who love it. And what I watch in them is this absolute obsession. And I've worked with lots who will have a conversation with a person in a grocery store while they're standing in line for something, while they're traveling at a conference. Like, that's what I mean by that concept of always be closing, always be asking. Like, if you're at a conference and you're standing around talking to people, it doesn't have to be a formal customer discovery conversation. Ask them a couple of questions, get curious. Like, it truly, that's what I would say, in really exceptional founders is an absolute love and an obsession and an innate curiosity about the community they want to serve.
Maybe just a simple example of that is that, I coming up here and spending the afternoon doing this, like there's some meetings for my own company that I pushed off. But even in sitting here and talking to Amanda, and she's like, "Oh, my boyfriend runs sport ball in town. My little boy's in sport ball." And I'm like, "We need to set up a meeting with your boyfriend. I really like, this is an organization I really want to work with." When I get home tonight, I'm going to tuck in my little ones and I'm going to flip open the laptop for another 3 hours and catch up on everything I've done. It's not work. I love it. And I'm okay with that. Right. But this is important to me too.
There's a second part. Any tips on some lower barriers, so maybe outside of business hours approaches that founders can explore besides email marketing?
For customer discovery?
I will categorically say customer discovery is not marketing. Just for clarity. So I don't know if the question is taking us outside of the scope of customer discovery. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, the response is very, it's dependent on what is this business and who, and, where are these customers, right? For me being, focused on community sports, if my daughter has swimming lessons on the weekend or my son has, 4-year-old soccer practice, I'm going to sit there and interact with the parents. I'm going to talk to the sports organizations, so I'm going to try and have those conversations just because I'm just generally interested in it. One tactic that has worked really well for us, which was kind of an aha moment, is we use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So, if you think about LinkedIn, it's your online resume, right? And a lot of people will say, I'm a administrator within this organization, I'm an executive of whatever. So as long as kind of say who the decision makers are within certain organizations you're going after, LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a great way to filter and find all the different individuals within a certain area. And then you can actually do either one-to-one direct messaging through LinkedIn in their inboxes, or you can do mass distribution. That's been a really kind of a good hack in terms of getting into people's inboxes. And I find it way more effective than email marketing, or just emails in general. Take away the marketing side of things, just emails in general, because things get lost within emails very, very quickly. But a lot of people are getting pulled into LinkedIn. If I send a message, it's going to be a push notification to them. So a lot of times it kind of breaks through some of that email traffic.
Maybe we should use a different word and just call it investigations.
Yeah.
How do you do investigation to find the people?
This would be probably a bit of a controversial answer, which would be if you are really struggling to find that customer segment, you might not be the right person. So I think about like Ty has like in the short time that I've known him, a real love of sports, real love of community, real love of family, has young kids. Like I can't think of anyone who would be naturally better positioned for that. I worked with Community SIF. Chris was a founder, had 4 kids, actively involved in gaming, had an absolute obsession with his kids having a safe online experience. I can't imagine anyone better. Justin obsesses over the redistribution of wealth into the hands of nonprofits every day. So when I think about the founders, like they just have an innate obsession and they're like it's a core part of their life. So what I would really challenge is if you don't fall into that category, is that the right business idea for you?
Why you? Why this?
Yeah.
Anything else online? Okay. Anybody in the room? Corey? Wait. Here. Let's make sure that people on the Zoom can hear you.
Hello, Zoom attendees. For the customer development, systematically, how do you approach this? From planning to documentation to actioning, and then how many times would you go through that loop?
And the answer has to be an integer?
Yeah, how do I go about doing it? I mean, as much as you will run different boot camps, I feel like I present like a formal structure around it. I don't know if I'm that formal around it, but there are a couple things. I mean, one is to be extremely clear and specific on who that earliest adopter, that innovator is, and making sure that you are only kind of running the experiment for them. And not getting distracted, because that's going to mess up with the information coming back. And if you come back and that that hypothesis around the customer segment is invalidated, like a no is not a rejection, it's just a redirection. So ideally you're using that kind of SPA thing about who's the next kind of segment that I'm going after. So I think one is just nailing down the persona that we're going after. I think there's a bit of list building around who do I think would be the first 10 to 15 contacts that I'm going to try and approach. I'm going to think really clearly about the questions and the conversation that I want to have. It's got to be, short to respect their time. The shorter it is, the more likely they're going to be, give your time, and then making sure that I'm not asking any leading questions, that it has the ability to have that answer turn into a story about, tell me about the last time you dealt with this situation. And usually, they're gonna take minutes, to answer that, as opposed to, a one-liner. So I'll go through and do that. And then I think it's just going out there and then, get out there and test, go out there and do it. I mean, it's going to be awkward for the first couple conversations, and you're going to slowly improve. Probably the information you're going to get back is going to be quite scattered. So that's going to kind of be a second pass on it. And I don't know how many times, I'm going to go through that loop of having those conversations and talking to different people. But I think, if you go through it, I think, I mean, if you do it right, I think if you have 20 conversations, maybe even 10 conversations, and everything is just drastically different, then you're probably barking up the wrong tree, and you should kind of pivot to something else. But I think even within, 10 to 20 conversations, you should start to see some patterns. And then I think it's then, maybe there's a further segmentation between, of the ones that I'm seeing patterns with, how do I take this list of 10 to 20 and pull it down to like, 5 to 7 and just kind of drill down on that. I think I'll go through that a couple more times, and that's probably going to be where I find, what my earliest starting point is. And it's going to be very different than what I thought it was going to be. It always is. Hopefully that answered the question, but it's continuous experimentation. Every time I do it is a little bit different.
And I'm gonna walk up to the line of product development and say, once you've done that initial, so we had the conversation about when are you done, like that first customer validation. So you've done that, then I like to get some sort of very rough prototype in place, not from an alpha beta, but just to test that the picture that you have in your mind of how you've understood the problem, such that you can put it into some sort of interactable form and then give it back to that customer segment that you've talked with, that you've nailed it down. And then to start the conversation around like, hey, how would this solve your problem? And it's less about the solution, but more in terms of using an interactive, real world way of testing, have I accurately understood the problem in a way that's solvable? So it's less about prototyping, but I just find that you need to pull it out of the theoretical and into the real world in a way that people can actually engage with what the concept is.
I'll give you an example of that. So this is not for sports share, but this is my previous company, which was still in sports, is we did a bunch of customer conversations. We got some good data. We had a reasonable idea around, what would be a unique solution that we could kind of put in place. We weren't going to write one line of code. We had a just kind of a visual mock-up, a video. It costs like, $200, $300, something like that. And it was about a 2-minute video of what looked like a product and someone navigating through the user experience and clicking on videos and chatting with somebody and, blah, blah, blah. And we went down to a conference where all these decision makers congregated, and we had our roll-up banners, and we just had this video going on a loop, and people would come by and ask questions. We would just have a conversation. It was a great, way to just kind of validate and test what they're seeing on there, and they would ask about it. We would kind of, bullshit them, whatever it is. And then we had a sign-up form where it was, for pre-registration, put your name, contact information. We walked to that conference with like 45 signatures for pre-confirmation on there. It's still what we launched with, 6 months later was quite a bit different because there was more validation needed to happen, but that was just good indication in a very cheap and effective way that we were on the right track. We didn't have to write one line of code.
One thing I just want to add, is I worked with a guy about a year ago who did some customer validation and did it all online using Fathom and Otter during quarters. And it was pretty remarkable for them to take those transcripts, put them in and say, what are the through lines? What is the patterns that keep coming up in these conversations? And it flags some interesting things. So when I think systems, it's like, tools are out there.
Yeah. So just what Corey was saying, just to reiterate, is with AI and all those tools that are in there, Otter for documenting those conversations, being able to upload them and kind of see the through lines that are in there. It's a massive advantage. Like the efficiencies that are in there. I mean, everything that I did when I was talking about that example, that was 2014. That that we did there. I mean, now that visual mock-up can be done with AI, and we had designers, we had video editors. It was a lot more complicated. So yeah, there's so much more efficiencies, and I think that's also maybe to another point is that it's why customer development and making sure the founders are truly, like, one of your biggest advantages is being an expert on the customer and an expert on the problem. Like that's going to be one of your key advantages, right? It's not that there's a barrier from a financial or even like a time perspective to get these products out there to test them. So just the barrier to startup is really coming down from like a cost and time perspective. It's going to be the best of the best that really know the customers and know how to take care of them, but which wins. So understanding how to do that is critically important.
Yeah, and I will just kind of add and say, creating stuff to show people is now easier than ever. The thing that is not getting any easier is, what are you testing? Like, what are you actually looking for? So I can show you a mock-up of anything, but that's great. What's the point, right? And so going back to your example with SportShare, again, if the point is engagement through the season, then you can make whatever mock-up you want, but you still have to wait till the end of the season and then wait for their season to restart and ask how many people came back. And what's the minimum product that you need to have in place? And it could be as simple as a Google Classroom that you created on your own, but has that feature that people come back for, right? So some things, there are no shortcuts for some indicators, but it's the intention of knowing what am I paying attention to, like what are my leading indicators, that is actually way more important than the mock-up of anything that you can spin yarn for.
And I think really the value of customer discovery is you have a set of assumptions. And then really customer discovery is just a bunch of experiments. Like how close are my actual assumptions to what customers actually want? And then it's about closing the gap. That's it.
And what actions do they actually do to show me
yes,
that I got it right?
And we won't, I don't want to get too much into it, but what you eventually learn is sometimes what customers say they want, and then the actions that they do take, there's not always alignment. But I think that's probably a session, a different topic, but just getting really comfortable with this idea that customer discovery is about curiosity and asking questions and listening to understand and testing your hypothesis and not panicking when what you get doesn't match what you expected.
So I want to be mindful of the time, and we still have pizza left, slightly warm pizza. Before I thank you for your time, and one thing, if there's one thing that these founders and these mentors should go and tell their founders or mentees to do, based on what they've heard in this workshop, what is that one thing that they should put on their first on the top of the list? Go do this right now, in context of customer discovery.
They just get out there and do it.
Clarify the it again?
The getting out there, talking to customers and asking the non-asking questions. Like just get out there, be curious, have the conversations, experiment with people that you're talking to, get outside your comfort zone.
Why are you still here? Go.
Yeah, maybe just to drill further into that is go look at your early customer segment. Go book meetings with 3 people and make sure you have 3 in-person conversations that have to be, 15 minutes and just drill into their biggest problems. So pick 3, go do it, and then report back. I think that would be the kind of the tactics of that.
3 people you don't know.
Yeah. Go out there and have 3 new ones and just have very, very, a difficult, deep conversation where they can just get into like all their workflow challenges. And chances are, if you strike the right tone in the conversation, you might say, hey, I need, 10 minutes of your time, whatever it is. But if it's a really big problem, like they're going to give you 30 minutes. Like they're going to make time for it because they've been looking for, a place to vent about this, and then you're on the right track. So
if you don't need AI to tell you what the insights are, like they'll just bark them on you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you all for showing up. And this is all recorded, so we can use AI to then create a workbook for us to do it on your own leisure time, right? Yes. Thank you, Kayla and Fernanda, for organizing, and the Education Committee for asking us to do this for the benefit of all of us. Thank you. Pizza.